Now, are you the world's dumbest deer hunter? I know I am at times. You feel like it. You make a mistake and you think, oh man, especially when it comes to mature buck and messing up, you feel like the dumbest deer hunter. And I think a lot of times we don't think of the subtle things that add up to really hurting our hunt before it even begins. And that's, we'll talk about the number one world's dumbest decision, dumbest deer hunter, whatever way you want to look at it. I'm not trying to knock deer hunters because we're all dummies at one time or another. And I'll go with number one here, not clearing a shooting lane. I had my target buck in Wisconsin finally come in early November, and saw him coming, knew it was him. And of course, he didn't go towards a water hole. He didn't go towards cleared lanes. He went towards a thicker area on my right side and went through one opening. And I couldn't have prepared for that one. He was just coming through too fast for when I could stand up and turn to my right. Went through a second hole, I stopped him. The only problem is I stopped him a little bit too late. He stopped behind some brush right after the second hole. He was right before the third hole, so did everything right. Neat. That's how I like stopping deer. Neat, if you need a louder one. And he stopped right in the third hole. So as soon as he started to step, neat, stopped him. Thought everything was perfect, knew the yardage, shot, and bang, hit a really large tree. And there's no large trees in the way. Really confused me. I even looked with my binoculars. Did the arrow go right through him? But it sounded so fast. It sounded like it happened so soon after I shot. And what I thought was an opening was not a good opening. There was two red pine branches dead hanging down like this. They were probably 15 yards out. Buck was just under 30. And it hit one of those sticks and it went into a pine tree about 3 or 4 feet to the left. And I could just sit and see my glowing knock right in that tree about 10 feet high. Now right there, I felt like the world's dumbest deer hunter. You know, I didn't prepare fully over there. I could have cleared those lanes. We were there. We cleared shooting lanes down in front. Why didn't I do that? You know, it accounted for not shooting that buck. Hopefully I still run into him this year. We have a lot left of the season. But I was really disappointed after that. I was disappointed in myself. You might feel that way a lot. You might feel that way too, though, or you make these mistakes. Number two, noise spooking. I remember I had a deer, decent buck I was watching. Comes in, makes a scrape. I'm not going to shoot him. Playing around with my phone, you know, watching and recording him and stuff, and just kind of taking it for granted that he's there. He doesn't know you're there. And then you just shift a little, and all of a sudden you shift a little bit. He looks right at you. Now, this wasn't something I was going to shoot, but now I'm starting to think, because when you're in an important hunt like that, and I look, all my hunts are important, you look at it like you don't want to spook anything. Because the second a deer takes off and blows and runs, deer hear that for a long ways away. They hear the blow, they hear the deer running. If something's close behind, it messes up your hunt. I mean, it takes an hour or two for that to settle down, and it could have ramifications, just spoil your hunt. So he looked at me, and I looked down and just tried to make sure he didn't see me. And he ended up just going away and blowing. And I don't even remember what happened the rest of the hunt there, but I remember thinking that was so stupid. I remember thinking, well, that was an amateur hour. You know, make that dumb little noise. And that happens early in the season a lot, that I had a different deer. It ended up being a little deer, probably a little fawn button buck. It was coming over my left shoulder in one of my stands, and that's an area where they can sneak up on you. And I'm looking out this way, here's something behind me, and, you know, thinking there's a lot of squirrels from that direction, I just went like that. Well, when they're 15 yards behind and they see your head go like this, look right up at you and run away, even though it was a little fawn. So just dumb. So, you know, these first two are on me. You know, that's what I'm calling. I feel like the world's dumbest deer hunter in that case. These next three, though, and down into here, this last one, really more conscious choices. ATV use. You know, a lot of times you get into late November, December, people start thinking, I don't want to hike up that hill anymore. Let's just ride the ATV. Well, you know, that ATV in most areas, there's small exception. People say, we're in Kansas, we use ATVs all the time to go to the stand. Well, you have 25,000 bow hunters, not 400,000 like some other states. Bucks die of old age in your area. It's a little bit different. You know, it's a Fantasyland state, completely different. Water holes, I've heard, so we just put the water hole, we don't bury them. We just put the water hole right on the ground. Well, you're hunting Iowa, you're hunting Missouri, a little bit different. Deer don't have that same level of pressure. Kentucky don't have that same level of pressure. So what deer do there, you understand. But But what deer do something somewhere else you don't, and you can't get away with that in most areas. So ATV use is one of those things. They hear you from a long ways away. I had a guide, an outfitter in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, say, we use ATVs all the time for our clients. That's how we hunt. Yeah, but they expect 20% success rate with their clients. I expect 100% success rate on my tags times 2, because usually I have 2 tags in Minnesota, Wisconsin, 3 in Minnesota. I'm not using all 3. The bottom line is, in Wisconsin, I expect to kill 2 bucks, and if I don't, I feel I failed. Their failure rate is they only succeed 1 out of every 5, and they use an ATV. I demand a much higher level of success than that. There's exceptions to all these. You know, I was telling Dylan earlier when we were talking about this video that when I walk up that hill, it's 400-foot change in elevation in less than a quarter mile. Every step is uphill. Some of the stands, it took me 45 minutes to get to one stand this year, probably 12 breaks. And I remember thinking it was snowy, it was slippery, I only fell once. But bottom line is, it's difficult getting down when it's slippery in some of these muddy areas. I started thinking, you know, I'm 52, I hope I can do this till I'm 75, 80, 90. But being realistic, if I don't really work hard, work out, hike a lot, I'm not sure it's going to be reasonable to make some of these treks when I'm 65. I think I can. I think I can work out increasingly so that I can continue the hunting lifestyle that I want to. But at some point, now if I used an ATV on that property, they'd be gone. Fortunately, we had the experience of the previous people that hunted there for 17 years using ATV to drop off hunters all the time, and they never shot anything. I think shot 2 nice bucks in 17 years. We shoot 2 to 3 nice bucks every year. And it's because they dropped the ATV. We'd wait for those 30 bucks, 30 deer, 25 deer to come over to us after they went on the property. We'd be waiting 500, 600 yards away, and we'd have them right in our lap then, because they'd do a deer drive every time they went out in the woods. At some point, though, you have to consider the enjoyment of your hunt. So there's a lot of people out there who hunt big hills where we go for clients, and we have a lot of clients that use ATVs to get to a certain point because they're not going to be hunting on that lane unless they do otherwise, or they're getting an electric vehicle, some kind of bike or vehicle. So there are exceptions. These next ones, to me, there's not exceptions. And I'll do as a countdown from what I consider serious to most serious, but no weapon practice. Now, a lot of you say, well, this is very serious. The thing is, I find that with hunters in general, they're very conscientious, good, proud, conservative people. Hunters practice. They like practicing. They like shooting their weapons. They like shooting their bows. They like shooting their guns. They like shooting whatever they're shooting. So this is very rare, but it's unacceptable. I'm not saying it's not serious. You know, some people would rate it as number 3. Some people in the comments below will say, oh, not practicing with your gun. Yeah, but 99.5% of all people practice with their weapons. So it's not affecting as many people to say that you're the dumbest hunter. But yeah, if you're not practicing, you are a dumb hunter. Anybody would say that. You can't say, well, I just don't have the time to practice. But if you don't have time, you shouldn't be in the woods. It doesn't matter what weapon you're using, bottom line. But there's not, fortunately, a lot of hunters that fall into this category. And so that's why it's number 3. Number 2, tracking decisions. This could be number 1. Fortunately, I think, you know, I don't know who came up with the phrase, when in doubt, back out. You know, I saw that on the Drury Brothers back in the 90s, I think late 90s, somewhere around there, 2000s. I don't know. Dylan, have you heard it your whole life? I mean, it's...
yeah, for sure.
Dylan, you're 31 right now? Or?
Yep.
So yeah, to hear it your whole life, hunting life, you would think, I mean, back to your 10, 9. Yep. So that's been a really cool phrase because I think that's kept a lot of people from overpressuring deer. But the tracking decisions once you shoot a deer that you make from the stand, that you make in those first moments, when you get out of your stand, when you get out of your blind, those often determine whether you're going to find that deer or not. Not if you call a dog in or not even how you track. Yeah, obviously you got to be persistent. Hunters are responsible people. They're going to be diligent, work hard to find the animal. More than the average hunter. Almost all hunters will do that. It's those decisions we make right after the shot. Because once you push a wounded deer, they go a half mile. They don't just go 200 yards unless they're really seriously mortally wounded, and we're not even talking about that because you found it then. But you're going to push that deer a half mile, little blood, because that's what happens when you shoot them in a bad spot. You don't get a lot of blood, and they're gone forever. And unless that deer is dead, calling in a tracking dog is a really bad idea, because then they just push a live animal around for miles. I saw someone who has a tracking dog service. When he mentioned the state, but he was showing online his GPS, and went off 5.3 miles across probably a dozen, 15 different properties, back and forth, all over the place. He was so proud of how far his dog went. Well, that was great, but the deer was alive. They never got it. Tracking dogs work great after the deer is dead. So that's a big risk and reward. Deer alive, great. Deer dead, not so much, because it can push it so far into other hunters, cross roads, whatever it might be. The bottom line is you push that deer, it's gone. And that's where you want to assess, is this a front end shot where it's more bone, muscle, heart and lung, meaning if it's either dead or not. You know, it might die of an infection a month later, which is rare, but it can happen. But bottom line is it's either dead or not in that front end bone area. High in the back, you know, towards the hind quarter. If you hit the artery, it's dead in 100 yards. It bleeds out fast, tons of blood. And if you don't, and it's just in the meat, it's probably one that it can live from pretty easily. Deer are amazing creatures. They get hit, leg comes off with a wound. They get hit by a car on the road, which is just crazy. And then you have this four-legged deer or three-legged deer running around for 4 years on your land. Amazing how they can, we'd be dead. We'd be dead within 2 or 3 days. We can't do that. Some of those wounds that they take, we'd be dead in an hour. They live for years. So they are amazing creatures, but I think people a lot of times push deer and say, well, it was a non-fatal shot. But they don't know that. They didn't give it a chance. Once you push it, it's gone. So that's a big one with me, really big one. That's close with number one. The difference with number two, though, in tracking decisions, is that you get caught up in the heat of the moment. You want to go get your deer. And so it's understandable. It takes a ton of patience and experience to say, you know what, we need to back out. It's always really good to say. You can say, when in doubt, back out. It's a catchy phrase. But a lot of people don't. And you get caught up in the emotion. But I can tell you that it doesn't matter if you're getting, I'm not saying it doesn't matter if you get bad hits, but as it relates to finding those deer over many years, you should find almost all the deer. I heard of a buddy of mine where we hunt in Wisconsin. They had 3 wounded on their neighbors, 1 wounded on his lane and 1 wounded on the other neighbor. So 5 deer wounded in a few day time frame in early November. And I would imagine that 4 out of 5 should have been found instead of lost. That's usually the statistics, maybe even 5 out of 5. I know 1 got caught on a trail camera later, so that's, 1 out of 5 that shouldn't have been found because it lived. But out of those remaining 4, I'm sure 3 could have been found. The point is that there's no excuse as a collection to have that many deer wounded in an area at one time and none of them be found. Decisions made right after the shot will determine that. But number one, and this isn't as serious as you may seem, like with not shooting your weapon, not making good tracking decisions, but number one to me is the hunters that have no regard to wind in their scent, in their downwind scent. This isn't as serious as not shooting your gun, but a lot of people don't do that. This isn't as serious as making bad tracking decision, but a lot of times that takes years of experience and patience to actually exercise good judgment on that. But when it comes to hunting and your lack of finding deer, because world's dumbest deer hunter, people think, oh, why are they dumb? Why are they not getting any deer? That's what you assume. It's because people go in and sit in stands with no regard to wind direction. I get comments all the time. It's like as if there's an option. Like people will say, for example, when do you use a stand but when it's not the perfect wind? You know what my answer is in the way I hunt? It's really easy. Never. Never. I developed that patience for whatever reason, probably because I didn't have any family member, anybody I hunted with, like, that I was going to this camp, doing it the way they taught me. And I had to learn on my own. Probably because, too, I didn't have a lot of vacation time. So when I actually went hunting and took a half day off, because I got to take a half day off at a time to maximize my 2 weeks, whether it was with the family or on my own, I wanted to maximize that time off. That's why I developed the weather algorithm through HuntWise, that applied to the HuntWise, the HuntCast, because I developed that 30 years ago, that hunting and that priority of hunting when it came to the weather, because I wanted to get the most out of my hunting. I didn't have a lot of time. So when it came to choosing a stand that had a bad wind, a bad access, I didn't have time to blow it. I really didn't. And so I didn't have time to hunt on bad weather days. I just didn't have a lot of time. And when it came into and migrated to having a young family, when I was away from the family, I had to make good choices. Maybe I should spend time with the family on a bad weather day and go hunt on this better weather day. That ruled my choices for where I worked. Since I started working really hardcore since 89, 90, I wanted to work in locations either I didn't have a lot of competition for vacation time or self-employed, so I could set my own hours. But I considered that wherever I chose to work full time, because I wanted to hunt on good days and maximize my time afield to make the most of it. So when it comes to choosing stands, we have clients, we were talking about this, I think in another video, but a client will choose, they have 40 to 80 acres, and they have this one stand right in the heart of their cover. And they'll say, well, can we keep that stand? Are you going to put it on the map? I'll say, you guys do what you want, but I'm not even going to put it on your design, because I'd choose that you won't hunt there. I'm hoping they take it out. I'm hoping they don't go sit in the middle of their property, because they have negative ramifications for weeks to come. And I don't like that. I'm not going to put a stand on a drawing and say, you should go hunt on stand number 15. Only when it's a really good time of the year, you could go in and blow your property. That's just not in our vocabulary. The answer is never, never, never. The most popular, best way, most effective way to control your scent is stand location. Meaning when you go into a stand, when Dylan and I go sit in a blind tonight, we start rattling off. We can hunt on the big 67 plot. We can hunt in Gold Rush. We can hunt in the Hermit around here. And those are the choices we have. And here we can hunt in the big redneck blind in Wisconsin. Or we can hunt, I don't know what stand we call it. It's Diego Scrape Stand, around in that area. We don't have a proper name for that one, do we?
I'd call it the Big Spruce.
Yeah, because it is a big spruce.
Spruce Almighty.
Yeah, Spruce Almighty. Yeah, I like that. Dylan comes up with the best names. LL Beams.
Yeah.
We have a 8-point with long beams, so Dylan said LL Beams. So that's stuck, LL Beams. Maybe the Spruce Almighty. I like that. But anyways, bottom line is we start talking. Of course, that's relative to sign. We have other stands we can hunt with the wind tonight, but I don't want to sit on them because I just don't feel confident with the amount of sign and sightings around those areas and where they're at currently. So, but we only consider the ones with good. I'd love to go sit in the Hermit Waterhole. I just don't think the wind's good for there. We could sit in the southwest corner. We've been seeing decent deer sign there. But I'm starting to think of, what are the best ones we could sit at? We narrow it down to those and we go sit. We don't even think of, hey, we got that one where we could sit, but it's going to be bad wind blowing right into the cover. Well, I'm just not going to sit there. To me, that's dumb. Because you have a choice. And if you only have, here's the other thing too, kind of like the exception with ATVs, spooking stuff with noise, not clearing a lane. Some of those can happen and you just look back, that was dumb, shouldn't have done that. But ATV use, maybe you don't want to climb up that giant hill. So, but when it comes to the wind, this is something that, there's some people that only hunt 5, 6, 7 days a year. And if you're on this channel looking for ways to improve your hunt, that's awesome, but you only have 5, 6, 7 days to hunt. And so you obviously have other priorities, things you're doing. There's nothing wrong with that. Then I see people that, I hear commenters, they only have one stand on one property. Well, if that's the case, you either look at it like, well, I'm going to hunt over a 6-week period and only hunt the best wind days, and I have that flexibility. Or you look at it like, I have 2 or 3 weekends to hunt. I just wouldn't even pay attention to the weather. Don't even think about it. Just go hunt. Have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone who's ATV, they're not going to walk up that big hill, or they can't walk that far because their age, condition, whatever it might be. Just go hunt and have fun. Don't worry about it. I'm not saying you're dumb when you're like that, but if you consciously make a decision, you have choices, you have options, or you failed to create options because you just didn't feel like it, then that's being dumb. Because when you go out and your wind is bad, you're never going to come close to the potential of the stand, the area, the land, and you're just wasting sits. I'm sure you guys could come up with some other things in here, like you might put not shooting your gun, even though it applies to very few people. Tracking decisions, I feel like that's a heat of the moment. Sometimes people get wrapped up in. But when it comes to hunting, if you actually want to shoot deer consistently and get your best and be the best hunter you can be, make sure you keep track of the wind at your stand location. And then we go that extra mile. We use Limit Shield. We use Limit Shield products. We use it for body wash, the body foam. I love that. And then we spray down so we're not leaving a big scent trail in the woods in and out. That's different. You know, a scent trail that's in the woods blowing 20 yards to a deer, I don't think they smell that. Your fingerprint on a camera blowing 10 yards that way, I don't think they smell that fingerprint from 10 yards away. But you sitting there and breathing, scent coming out from around your neck, your ears, your nose, your mouth, they're going to smell that 30, 40, 50 yards away, 100 yards in a lot of cases, no matter how stinky or clean you are. They're going to smell it. You can't play around with that. And if you plan your hunts around eliminating your scent cone from every being in play when it comes to the deer you're hunting on your tree stand months in advance before the season even begins, then you're going to really grab hold of the successful potential of the outcome of your hunt for every hunt. And pay attention to the wind when you're on that stand and where you're hunting in the future, and your stand locations, having multiple stand locations, your access in and out of those. You do that, make good decisions when you hunt. Yeah, there's sign here, there's not here, just some of the basic stuff. Then you're going to become an extremely successful hunter if you haven't considered doing this already. I urge everyone out there to really check out my web classes. They've been wildly successful. We have one that details how you should design your land, another one that details how you should plant and maintain and manage a food plot program. How can you make those decisions that fit your land specifically and not someone else's? Unfortunately, there's so much information in the hunting industry that says you should do this, but it doesn't apply to you. These web classes directly apply to you. And then we have our third web class that came out last year, our rut web class, navigating the entire rut. And then we have our fourth one coming out, which is hunting hills and thermals. I urge you to check those out, try the web classes, and they're all about teaching, helping you understand how you can navigate, not only managing your property, food plots, and the rut, but also hunting strategically, hills, thermals, and wherever you pursue whitetails for your dream and your passion.